Cruise ship or hotel workers of Reddit, what is something you aren't allowed to tell us? Story 1. I worked as an improv actor on a cruise once for 6 months. What we don't tell you is half the show scripted. We just tie in your suggestions. Story 2. I currently work as a housekeeper, seasonal or summer. People leave anything and everything behind. Forget your curling iron? You probably have one. Need a charger? Yep. Toys for your child? You got it. If you ask while we're in between rooms or cleaning a common area, we'd love to help you out. No one really asks. I've worked for 2 hotel chains and the comforter thing was true at both. That's always my travel advice. Take the comforter off the bed as soon as you check in. Story 3. Front desk manager here. If you ask for a pillow, I'll give you a pillow. If you're asking for escort services, you ask for a pillow for the second time with emphasis on the word pillow. I'm not allowed to ask whether you wanted a pillow or a pillow, but if you emphasize the word, I'll get it. Also, go to the concierge, down to the lobby instead of calling. Everyone calls if they want a pillow. You have to be either dense or really wanting one to go to the concierge. Story 4. Worked for a while on Princess. The cruise line pays for the time that any boat is docked, therefore it is good for the bottom line if the ship gets out of the port as soon as possible. Ports that are closer to a big city cost more money. That's why we would sometimes dock far away from a major destination and passengers would have to take a train to the big city. The ship only makes good money while it's out at sea, so I've been on voyages that would send a late afternoon or night at sea instead of in port, in spite of 2 destinations being 30 minutes from one another. These are situations I've seen on Atlantic crossing voyages, where destination locations are listed that the ship will be visiting, but no one has good enough weather to get into that port in years. It just makes it look like there'll be a destination instead of repeated days at sea. The labor force on different cruise lines tends to be preferred by different ethnicities. There are actually 2 crew bars, one for the officers and one for the rest of the crew. Boils down to being pretty racist with one for English speakers and one for everyone else. As a non-officer, I was literally not allowed to dance with customers on the club dance floor. Drinks and cigarettes are hella cheap for the crew. Patter and jokes for most shows are repeated week in and week out. Story 5. The workers all get it on with each other all the time. Time to apply for jobs on a cruise ship. On Princess, there was a 9-to-1 guy-to-girl ratio among the crew. Suffice it to say that mad ugly girls were goddamn prizes. Story 6. Get a free fridge in your room. Say it is a medical need for medication. HIPAA laws mean you can't pressure details out of you. May not work for smaller motels or hotels, but should for most larger hotels or cruises. Story 7. We pray you don't finish all that banquet food so we can. Oh, and untouched food eaten out of bus tubs? That's a thing. Hey guys, if you like the content and love listening to how I read the stories, please press the subscribe button and click on the notification bell so you'll get notified of my future uploads. Thank you. Now back to the stories. Story 8. Hotel worker here. Ask for everything you need. It'll be provided. Also complain about every problem you see. You won't believe the amount of free stuff complainers get. It's awful. And never forget to tip your bellboy. You know what happens if you forget to tip the bellboy? The bellboy's tip touches your toothbrush when you leave. Story 9. Odds are someone has passed on your cruise. Think about all the old folks you see get on the boat. For a lot of them, this is their retirement home, and cheaper than a lot of other retirement homes. They're literally taking cruises until they die, and we eventually find them in their cabins. Story 10. Just like airlines, hotels purposefully oversell. The hotel will deliberately sell more rooms than it has and banks on cancellations and no-shows. It's possible that at any given time, you could show up with a reservation and be walked to another property, where the hotel will then pay for your room at another location. This might sound like a sweet deal if you're traveling for leisure, but it's a huge pain if your company's footing the bill and you've been traveling all day and just want to climb into a bed. Story 11. Ships can dump toilets directly out to sea when they're far enough from shore. Sometimes they cheat and do it a little closer in, sometimes they do it at port. Don't get in the water down current from a cruise ship. Also, a lot of lines will dump trash at sea, especially if they're going really far from shore or will be on the water for a while. Usually this is stinky food waste, but sometimes they just dump the whole lot. The amount of junk in the ocean based on this alone makes me wonder. Story 12. Ex-hotel employee here. If you ever need to cancel a hotel reservation but it's already past the cancellation deadline, just call and move your reservation up a few days. Wait 5 minutes, call back, now you're well within the cancellation window, and can cancel your stay for free. Story 13. I am a cruise ship worker. First one is, we don't want you to know that we actually have more fun than the guests. Sure, we'll work the big white hot party that you're all going to, but once we finish our shift, all hell is breaking loose in the crew bar. Just below and to the sides of where you're sleeping, there are crew members having great fun. Our beers cost $1. We also don't want you to know that all those funny jokes we tell you at bingo, yeah, the same ones are said every single cruise. That really funny answer you gave us about your wife during the Happy Couples game? Heard it. It was said last cruise and the one before that, and the one before that. We are not allowed to sleep with passengers, but we do know all the nooks and crannies the cameras don't reach. There are morgues below deck and a jail cell. We get at least 3 deaths on board a month. Some people go on a cruise to pass. And no, I do not know where Jack and Rose are. They're not real people. Story 14. A guy I know well had a gig playing with a band on a cruise ship. Good guy, big guy, and hasn't had to deal with getting screwed over too often in his life. So he catches the eye of a tipsy pretty girl one night and she tells him she's single and looking for a good time, but can't take him back to her room because of a roommate. What's he going to do? Turns out she's on a cruise with her fiancé, and he finds out what happened. She panics and tells him that she was very drunk, she was taken advantage of. Police get involved, and this guy, who wasn't a US citizen, is almost extradited to the US before a nice Christian girl has a crisis of faith and tells them the real version of events. Got a bit of news coverage when it happened. He's obviously blacklisted from ever working on cruise ships again. Story 15. The staff on most all cruise lines are not trained nearly well enough to handle an abandoned ship situation. It would be chaos if it were to happen on a large vessel. The safety briefing you go to is just theater, and we want to be there even less than you do. Norovirus is way more common on ships than you would think. Security staff on ships are poorly equipped to handle a major security breach. The words Bright Star over the PA indicates a medical emergency is happening. It is a page for medical staff to respond to. The captain earns bonuses for saving fuel. Leaving port early or arriving late means the ship can go slower and conserve fuel, which means more money for the captain. I'm thinking maybe you shouldn't have revealed that third one. Story 16. I work at an upscale resort, earning $500 a night on average. I work in the entertainment department, meaning we help with both the daycare center and with large groups in-house that companies host. I will say that our child daycare is pretty safe. The only sketchy thing I would say is that we will always tell you that your kid had a good time, regardless if they had been crying up until just before you got there. Parents leave their numbers with us to call if the kid wants to go home, but whenever a kid complains that they want to go home, we do everything in our power to make sure that they stay. 'Cause money, duh. Also, the in-group activities that we do, biking, hiking, etc., are sometimes made up on the spot, since the entertainment department decided not to properly train us in all of our offered activities. Newer staff, generally the people that only work summers, are told the morning of that they're running a certain activity and given a really vague rundown of how it's supposed to go, and told to do their best to make stuff up but make sure it sounds good. Companies pay thousands of dollars for these activities, but I can assure you that the thought that goes into these activities is essentially zero. Story 17. I've worked in hotels for 8 years. Hotels vary widely in policy and procedures. Some may give you a phone charger if you ask, and others will tell you it's guest's property, which it is, and kindly ask you to bugger off. I'm currently a housekeeping manager, and we do change the sheets and blankets for every guest. If you're staying more than 3 nights, we will change it during your stay. Hotels are extremely fond of giving out free stuff for minute complaints. A hair on your sheets, the room is 2 degrees too warm, you farted and it left a stain in your underwear. No matter how small, if you're angry enough, we will get you something. Now, having said that, screw you in advance and sideways. Hotel employees have to deal with this every single day, and we hate you. Like from the bottom of my being, I hate your guts. Sure, you may get something like breakfast for free, but you're ruining multiple people's days so you can get some $15 hash browns for free. Never book through a third party, i.e. Priceline, Booking.com, etc. You have absolutely no recourse if anything goes wrong, and we most likely will not compensate you in any way since you will not be receiving a hotel survey. More importantly, Priceline or another third party will mess up your reservation in some way or give you wrong or misleading information, and there's nothing we can do about it. We'll just ask you kindly to call them and talk to them about it. The most important tip, there is a difference between a request and a guarantee for bed types. If you book and request a room with double beds, that just means if we have any left, we'll give you one. I don't know how many angry soccer moms came in with 8 kids livid because you gave me the wrong room type. I booked 2 beds. Be kind to your housekeepers. This may not be your problem, but please treat it like it's yours. It's just disrespectful to trash it and think, well, they get paid to clean up, right? If you're an elite tier member of a hotel chain, ask nicely for an upgrade. If we say we don't have one, let it go. You have no idea how many elites come in pissed off that there's no suites available, and I'm just sitting there like, dude, there's 100 other people checking in today with your exact same status. You're not that special. If you like big bathrooms, ask for a handicap-accessible room with a roll-in shower. Normally about twice the size of a standard bathroom, but without the tub. If you want to check in early, don't just show up. Call ahead. We may not have any rooms available. My golden rule is really just be a decent human being. If you're nice to staff and can chat them up for a bit, if they're not swamped, most likely they will hook you up in some way. We meet about 60% scumbags, 30% average, and 10% cool people on a daily basis. And we remember who the cool people and scumbags are. Story 18. We can hear you going to Pound Town through the paper-thin walls. We can also hear you not going to Pound Town. Story 19. Former Pets Hotel worker here. Day camp makes your dog worse. They may be really well behaved when you start coming, but there are some bad dogs there, and your dog will pick up bad habits. Eating poo, digging in the water bowl, etc. That being said, your dog is still a dog. Don't get upset if you see your dog getting humped by another dog, or if they're doing the humping. It's all natural. Intact males aren't even allowed in a day camp for this reason. Once had a woman freak out when she brought her Yorkie to try day camp. The first thing the dog did was lick the pee off another. She never brought her dog back. Kind of an overreaction. Interesting move, Con. Let's see how this plays out. Story 20. I worked as a room service attendant in a 3-star hotel. Nothing too crazy, but boy were there some crazy stories. I worked with a woman at the front desk who had been doing night shifts for over 30 years. One day I asked her a question similar to yours. What can you not tell me about this place? What are the secrets? What's something that would freak me out? She knew every single room where someone had passed. She knew how it happened, when, and what time of the day. Everything. She never forgot. She's obviously not allowed to tell customers this information, but boy was it fascinating. That lady should do an AMA. Story 21. I spent 6 years with RCL. When you pass away, you go from guest to cargo in our paperwork. On 9 out of 10 cruises, someone died. Half of those were self-caused. Panama Canal repositioning cruises, west coast to east coast, are the worst for losing older guests. Deck chairs on the observation decks become a hot item. We blast, "Do not save deck chairs" over the PA system for days before, but nobody listens. We have cameras watching the hot tubs that the bridge and engine control room monitor 24/7. If you decide to bump stuff with your significant other late at night, there are likely more than 6 or 7 different nationalities watching you. Story 22. Been in this field for 8 years now in the hotel capital of the world, Las Vegas. Here are a few things I can tell you. It pays to be nice to your check-in person. We deal with jerks every day who think that paying for a room makes them God King of Hilton or something. Spoiler, it doesn't. But if you're a pleasant person to talk to, hell, I'll bend over backward to help you. Ask nicely enough and I might even get you a lower rate. On a related note, stop trying to weasel your way to a cheaper room. Do you want the AAA rate? You better have a AAA card. Military rate? Whip out the military ID. If you don't have those things, I'm not going to take your word that you'll get it faxed over in the morning. And for the love of God, don't try to bribe me. I've had people offer me drinks, cash, head from a totally hot girl, and all kinds of "I'll make it up to you, I swear" crap. Here's the short answer. No, you're not getting your room for half off. No one gets the room for half off. No one. My job is worth more than $20 and a 6-pack of Bud Light, brosif. On a related note, as others have said, don't argue with me about the rate. If you say you found it cheaper online, then book it online. We don't price match. Ask before you complain. We know the area. If we recommend a restaurant, it's probably because we can vouch for it. Want to know a good show to see? I've been to a bunch, and I'll set you up with something that won't be a waste of money. Noise complaints will be promptly ignored. Why? Because sound carries from several rooms above you. Most people don't know which room is loud even when it's right next to them. Being one room off is the difference between asking someone to keep it down and waking up the rage lady at 3 a.m. I'll go up and listen to see if I can pinpoint the room, but if I can't, then you're just going to have to deal with it. Vegas specific thing. No one cares about your escapades. No one. We've heard and probably seen it all. No one is going to bat an eye when an obvious worker walks through the door and asks for directions to your room. We don't care how many adult videos you order. No one is impressed that you had a 3-way. No one. The people who stay with us most are the biggest jerks. Diamond members or the equivalent of other brands. Are those guests who spend a lot of time at hotels. While we appreciate their business, and I can sympathize with the amount of time you're on the road or in the air, that does not entitle them to anything they please. I've had Diamond members ask me to move guests to other rooms because they were having a conversation at a normal volume, and I've had them threaten to see my bum get fired. I even had one woman demand a free night because she hit the emergency button on her room phone. She said that the police officer sent to check on her had disturbed her sleep. Please, for the love of God, find a hotel before you go somewhere. People know Las Vegas is the gambling and showgirls mecca, but there's something else that sells out the entire town on a regular basis. Conventions. There are a lot of these throughout the year, and if they're big enough, they can sell out every room from here to Boulder. So please, check before you leave, because chances are you're going to be out of luck if you have to find somewhere the same day. Finally, don't book through Expedia, Hotels.com, Travelocity. They're all owned by the same people. Their customer service is useless. They will gladly book you into a hotel that is already full, which will only cause more problems for you, the person at the desk, and the poor guy on the support line. Story 23. Generally speaking, hotel guests who book through Expedia and other websites are expendable if we gotta walk someone. Also, you're booking the bad rooms at the highest price if you do it last minute. Do it long in advance, and you are still booking crappy inventory. Groups and corporate travelers always get better treatment because they come back and represent a lot more login term revenue than you. People that book online are like people that switch toothpaste because one is cheaper this week. You're not loyal. If you were, you'd book direct. Sure as hell right I'm not loyal. You'll charge me $130 a night, but I can find it for $89 on Booking.com or Hotels.com or Expedia, or book it for $69 on Priceline. Easy choice. Story 24. When you bring your children to our hotel for sporting events, baseball tourneys, etc., we really hate you more than them because you get drunk and ignore them while they tear our hotel apart. Story 25. Hotelier here. I worked in numerous luxury 5-star properties worldwide. You'll be shocked if you know the food quality in buffets. I've seen yellow food coloring added and labeled as saffron sauce, pan-fried sea bass. It's pan-fried whitefish that comes in generic bags labeled white fish. People change the expiration date on stuff so that the food cost doesn't increase. The amount of frozen food sold and labeled as fresh is astounding. A la carte food tends to have much better quality. Story 26. Tip the housekeepers. They're paid badly and deal with a lot of used. That's a rude thing to call the guests. Story 27. There was another cruise ship thread on Ask Reddit once where a guy described a disappearance. Apparently, a teenage girl was trying to get into her boyfriend's cabin without her parents knowing about it by climbing around over the railings of the ship. She fell overboard and no one saw. By the time anyone realized she was gone, it was several hours later, and the ship was a few hundred miles away. Apparently, they picked it up on one of the cameras. Can you imagine being those parents? Can you imagine falling into the water and watching the ship sail off? At night? Story 28. Hotel worker here. Yes, if you whine and complain about stuff, you'll most likely get it for free. But if you keep whining too much for too much and harassing employees, we'll blacklist you in our system and make sure you're not welcomed in any of our properties ever again. Period. Story 29. I worked as a night clerk at a hotel for 9 years. If you walked in and asked for a room and I thought that you could be a problem, we would suddenly have no rooms left to sell. Like I said, 9 years. I could usually tell before someone was out of their car if I was going to sell a room. Be it obnoxious behavior or the fact that so-and-so obviously wouldn't have a valid credit card, I had grown an eerie intuition as to whether or not the incoming guest would be a good sale. If we were desperate for business and I didn't like you, I would have sold you the room, but I wouldn't offer any discounts and I would have stuck you in the most haunted room we had. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out this next video. The YouTube algorithm really thinks you like it.